pioneered the system of Indian indenture, of which I am a product. Hence, the passage in chapter 3 of the book, which I am going to read to you. On the 1st of January, 1881, in the wake of Gladstone's first letter to the Calcutta firm, the sailing ship Elora arrived in Georgetown from Calcutta after a voyage of nearly 3 months. Its human cargo was indentured laborers from the sugar plantations of British Guiana. And among them, as you have heard, bound for that same estate of Radisson was a widowed mother, Dulney, and her son of 9, Ramphal. My grandfather, who I did know, my great-grandmother, who I did not. A century and a half later, for Radisson, read Carlton Gardens, and for my great-grandmother on the Elora, read me. And the conjunctures continue. As another passage from chapter 2, another ferry of infamy, reflects. "142 years later, to the month in July 1975, that is 142 years after Gladstone bought Carlton Gardens, I took up my appointment in London as Commonwealth Secretary General. And I moved into the Secretary General's residence, the residence of my predecessor, Arnold Smith, a distinguished Canadian. Where? At 5 Carlton Gardens. 5 and 6 Carlton Gardens had then been merged. They were all one. And the building was called Wool House. Sugar was no longer king. How full a circle the wheel of history thus described. John Gladstone's letter of 1836 had started a system that would eventually bring my main ancestors from India to Guyana, to the same estate of Radisson that he once owned. 3 generations later, those very events would combine with others to take me to London in the service of a Commonwealth of which Gladstone could never even have dreamt, to dwell at the address in London he had chosen for his own retirement. The moving finger of history, having written, does move on. But conjunctures of this kind help to remind us that every piece of history our actions inscribed today helps to determine the nature of tomorrow's entry, and in so doing, to bind the present to the future, and the future to the past. My second passage is rather different. It is from chapter 13, The Queen and the Commonwealth. My first formal engagement in London as Commonwealth Secretary General was a courtesy call on Her Majesty as Queen and Head of the Commonwealth. A courtesy call by my wife and me. It had all been arranged before my arrival, and it was confirmed by letter from the Marshal of the Diplomatic Corps. It was a short letter, but it offers glimpses of that time, not all that long ago, in 1975. It was this: I am writing to confirm that the Queen will receive you and your wife in audience, with a capital A, on Thursday, 17 July at 12:40 p.m. at Buckingham Palace. Would you please arrive at the grand entrance at 12:35 p.m. on that day? The dress would be morning dress for yourself, and day dress and hat and gloves for your wife. Now there were a few problems. Of course, I had never possessed morning dress. Guyana had adopted a rather relaxed dress code appropriate to the tropics. So anything like tails was out of the question. For our formal wear, we had adopted a Nehru-style tunic, and that is what I wore to the palace. National dress was always acceptable. Besides, I had an absolute aversion to hiring. Lois, too, had been in the Caribbean for over 20 years, and she had neither hat nor gloves. But somehow, she conjured up both. The audience, for all its pompous intonations, was really a rather relaxed, getting to know you call. Formal, of course, in its structure, but informal and relaxed in its nature. The Queen, I felt, was pleased to receive her new Secretary General, and the message to me was one of a rather special welcome. It was also one assuring me of access as necessary. I left with the sense of a Queen as a friendly, caring, and perceptive head of the Commonwealth. Those were very, very early perceptions that would be reinforced over and over again in the 15 years of the working relationship that followed. Her Majesty was then not yet 50. And I especially value the framed, signed photograph of a mature but youthful Queen that she gave me on that occasion. And that is in the book. The next passage is from chapter 17, the Brandt Commission.